Welcome. In this video, we'll be taking a look at how to use multiple exponent rules to simplify expressions. So, if you watched my last video on simplifying expressions using multiple rules for exponents, it's going to be the same story. So, this is the order of operations in a sense that we're going to use. So, I'm going to start by using rule number 1 and then progress down until I get to rule number 4. So, the first step is I'm going to take care of powers to powers. And if you watch my last video, the way I do the coefficients, like -2 and -3, is I save those until later. So -2 I keep in its own little house, and then I just copy the exponent on the outside. Okay, for everything else, I'm actually using my rule number 1, which basically entails multiplying the exponents together. So u squared to the -2nd power, when I multiply those exponents, I get u to the -4th. And then v to the -6th, when I multiply those exponents, w to the -6th. And that takes care of my first group. My second group, well, the exponent on the outside isn't written, so I'm going to slip a 1 in. And when I, again, -3 is a coefficient, so I take care of that later. So I just copy the exponent on the outside, and then u to the 4th to the first is just going to stay u to the 4th, and then 2 times 1 is 2, so I get just v squared. Okay, now I'm on to rule number 2, which is taking care of negative exponents. So what I'm going to do is, remember, negative exponents really indicates that I'm looking for reciprocals, so that means flip. So the way I'm going to set this up is I've got a top and I've got a bottom. So on top, that's really where all this stuff is currently. So this guy, -2 to the -2nd power, I'm going to move that, since its exponent is negative, to the bottom position. So, and now the exponent, remember, stays the same number but switches sign, so it becomes -2 to the +2 power. U to the -4th is also going to move to the bottom. V to the -6th is going to move to the bottom. And then if I move over to my second group, -3 to the first, positive exponent means it's going to stay right where it is on top. U to the 4th is going to stay right where it is on top. And then V to the 2nd is going to stay right where it is on top. Now notice that I've got a negative number here, a negative coefficient, but all I'm concerned about is the exponent. So if the exponent's positive, that particular number or variable is going to stay right where it is. If it's on top, it stays on top. If it was on the bottom with a positive exponent, it would stay on the bottom. Okay, now I'm going to go and use rule number 3, which says if I multiply like bases, then I add the exponents together. So if I look at my top, well, here I don't have any like bases that I'm multiplying. If I look on the bottom, I don't have any like bases that I'm multiplying. So I can kind of skip rule number 3, although I'm going to do one thing to make this look a little cleaner, and that's to take care of these coefficients. So if I do -3 to the first power, that's just -3. U to the 4th, V to the 2nd. On the bottom, -2 to the 2nd power is +4, u to the 4th, v to the 6th. So it's really when I'm applying rule number 3 that I take care of the coefficients, not before. Okay, and then the last rule is if I'm dividing by like bases, then I'm subtracting the exponents. So what I'm going to end up with is, well, I'm going to copy down the -3 and the 4. And then if I have u to the 4th over u to the 4th, those guys are going to cancel out and just become 1. If I do 4 minus 4, I get 0. So the u's are going to all cancel out. And for the v's, I've got more factors of v on the bottom than I have on top. So what I'm going to end up with is v to the 4th on the bottom. 6 minus 2 is 4. So my final answer is negative 3 over 4v to the fourth. Okay, I'm going to have you try problem number 2. Pause the video and then restart when ready. Okay, so for number 2, again, if I follow my kind of order of operations for exponents, the first thing I'm going to do is to take care of any powers of powers. So notice how there's just a negative sign in front of the x to the fourth. Whenever I see that, I actually slip the number 1 in, because really this means negative 1 x to the fourth. So I slip that in so that it's easier for me to deal with deciding whether the final answer is supposed to be positive or negative. So then what I'm going to do is negative 1, since it's a coefficient, I take care of that later. So I just copy the exponent. And then I'm multiplying the exponents together. So I've got x to the negative 12th, u to the negative 6th. On the bottom, 2 is a coefficient, so I take care of that later. So I leave it as a negative third power. And then I'll have z to the positive 21. Okay, over in the second grouping, notice how I don't have an exponent written. That means really there's a 1 there. So that means when I multiply exponents, I'll just get u squared over z to the negative first. Nothing changes. Okay, next step is to, again, take care of any negative exponents. So to do that, I just make one fraction bar. Since I'm multiplying these fractions anyway, I would just be multiplying tops and bottoms. So let's see what's going to stay and what's going to go. So if I look at on top, I've got negative 1 to the negative third power. That's going to move. Because it's got a negative exponent, I'm going to move it to the bottom. It becomes negative 1 to the third. X to the 12th comes to the bottom. U to the 6th comes to the bottom. And then the u squared is going to stay on top. Okay, if I look at the bottom terms, negative 2 to the negative third is going to move to the top. Becomes negative 2 to the third. And z to the negative first is going to come on top. And z to the 21st is going to stay right where it is on the bottom, since it has a positive exponent. Okay, next step is this is when I take care of my coefficients. So, and then I apply the rule number 3, which is if I'm multiplying like bases, I add the exponents together. But if I look on top, I don't have any like bases. And if I look on the bottom, I don't have any like bases. So all I'm going to do in this step is take care of the coefficients. So negative 2 to the negative third power is negative 8. And then I've got u to the second, z to the first. On the bottom, negative 1 to the third power is still negative 1. X to the 12th, u to the 6th, z to the 21st. And then last thing that I'm going to do is apply rule number 4, which says if I'm dividing like bases, then I subtract the exponents. So notice also that I've got negative 8 divided by negative 1. Well, negative over negative just means that I end up with positive. And since I have just a 1 on the bottom, I don't even need to write it. And now let's look at what we've got. So I've got x to the 12th. That doesn't have any, there's no factors of x on the top. I've got more factors of u on the bottom than I have on top. So I know I'm going to end up with factors of u on the bottom, and 6 minus 2 is 4. And I have more factors of z on the bottom than I have on top. So I know I'm going to end up with factors of z on the bottom. And 21 minus 1 is 20. So that's my final answer.